I'm in an odd mood. Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we are going to talk about all of the books that I read in the month of April. So I have 10 books that I read, and I have some that are 5-star and some that are very low, like 2-star reads. I'm going to quickly go through all of those books. Let's get into the video. So the first book that I read this month was All the Little Raindrops by Mia Sheridan. I actually filmed a reading vlog of me reading this book and reacting to it. I was also on vacation part of the time. I ended up rating this a 4.25 stars. Basically, the whole synopsis behind this book is a dark romance between this boy and girl who are both in high school, and they meet each other because they are both kidnapped and held in cages. They're cage neighbors, essentially. You're getting both of their point of views. There's also this third point of view that you're getting, and you don't really know who that person is just yet. You slowly piece that as you go along in the story. Both of these characters, they're trying to survive, and they're being forced to do these unspeakable things in order to survive. I just truly enjoyed this book so much. I felt like it was such a deep story about just two people who both have this very traumatic and just scary experience, and it just shows their growth in the whole process of their life after all of this happens. And I feel like it was just really beautiful seeing how they are able to overcome that past trauma and then eventually find closure and find peace. But this book kind of jumps between two different timelines. The first chunk of the book is whenever they're being held in these cages, and then basically the whole second half is when they are adults, and the guy is now a detective and the girl is helping him because there are some similar cases that are happening that is similar to what they went through when they were in high school. I thought that was very interesting, getting to see them as adults, and I also was very satisfied with the ending. The second book I read this month was Child of Light by Terry Brooks. Now, this is a fantasy duology. The second book is Daughter of Darkness, and I also read this during my reading vlog video. So if you want more of my live reactions of what happened when I was reading this book and the last one, definitely go check out that video. This is essentially a fantasy world where our main character, she has grown up being locked up in this prison. It starts right away where she is escaping prison with a group of her friends. And so at the very beginning, it's very fast paced. However, I ended up only giving this book 2 stars. Sadly, I just did not vibe well with the writing style. I feel like the author, the way she wrote things, it was just very straight to the point. It was very much just, I did this, then I did this, that made me do this. Like, it didn't really feel like there was that much emotion or description. I felt like there wasn't that much of, I don't know, I just couldn't get connected to the characters because of the writing style, and I feel like that's what really made me end up not enjoying it. I ended up like skimming through the last probably 25% of this book just because I was ready for it to be over with, but I also didn't want to DNF it. I wanted to know what would happen. So I am not going to be picking up the second book. I wasn't able to connect to it. That was very disappointing. The next book I read, which was also in that reading vlog, was The Good Sister by Sally Hepworth. I've heard great things about this author. I know she has a lot of really well-known mystery thriller type books. This book follows 2 sisters, and they both live very different lives. One of them, you can tell right away she's on the spectrum, and the other sister is very strict, and I feel like just kind of has her life together. Our one sister who has her life kind of together, she can't get pregnant, and so the other sister takes it upon herself to get pregnant for her sister in order to thank her just for being there for her whole life and raising her, essentially. I thought overall it was a very decent book. I ended up rating this 3 stars. I did guess the plot twist at the very end very early on, which was disappointing, but I still really enjoyed the story. It was very fast chapters, and I really liked the different diary entries you would get from one sister, and then some of the chapters were told from the other sister's perspective. So I just felt like that was a really cool twist on the story. Yeah, I would definitely recommend this author. I feel like her writing style, I could get used to it, and I feel like I've definitely seen myself reading more of her books in the future. Next, we have Heartless Hunter by Kristen Ciccarelli. Don't know if I said that right, but probably not. I gave this book a 5 stars. I loved this book so much. I thought it was so good from the get-go. I feel like I was just pulled into the story. I felt like the setting was just done so well. Like I've seriously felt the vibes of this book while I was reading it. But this story, it is following a witch and a witch hunter and how they fall in love. The main character, she is a witch. She didn't know she was one until she turned 16. And in this world, witches are outlawed. This kingdom was run by witches witches. However, this whole rebellion came about and these regular people, they overthrew the witches and now witches are being hunted essentially. Our main character, she is trying to save other witches, so that's kind of where you start the story. She is in the process of saving all of these different witches. So it kind of had this like Robin Hood feel to it really, but also it had a Bridgerton vibe, which does not sound like it should correlate at all. But with how she was like basically stealing from the rich and giving to the poor, saving people, yada, yada, yada. And it's done in like a high society where people are being courted, and like think of fashion in Bridgerton, that's what they're wearing. So that's why it was a very interesting contrast. And I really, really fell in love with how it was written. And I absolutely loved our two main characters. You get both of their point of views. And I just felt like it was done so well. The ending was everything. And I am so incredibly excited for the second book. Next up, we had A Promise of Parado by Kate Golden. This is the second book in the Sacred Stones series. The first book is A Dawn of Onyx, which I gave 5 stars back in January. So this was highly anticipated for me this year. I was so incredibly excited to read this book and it did not disappoint. I ended up rating this 4 stars. So it wasn't as good as the first one in my opinion, but I also don't know if it's because I was coming off of another fantasy world that I gave 5 stars. I felt like I was almost comparing this one to that one, which totally does not do this book justice. And that's a shame. So I kind of wish that I read like a different genre in between my 2 fantasy worlds, but I was in a fantasy mood. So I'm not going to change what is making me want to read. I really enjoyed this book. It's just a continuation from the first book, obviously. I don't want to say too much just because once again, this is the second book in that series. Our main character, she is a healer in this kingdom and it's definitely an enemies to lovers romance. The romance is done so well. It's just done so well. I absolutely loved the romance in this whole series so far. However, I will say in this book, the main character annoyed me just a smidge. Probably like the first half of the book. She really annoyed me. But then after that, we're good. Still very much looking forward to the third book, which I believe comes out this fall, if I'm not mistaken. Next up, we have Pineapple Street by Jenny Jackson. Now, I'm just gonna say this. I had so much anxiety going into this book. I was kind of nervous reading it just because there's been a lot of mixed reviews about this book. I've heard a lot of people love it and a lot of people hate it. And I was kind of afraid that I was gonna fall on the hate end of that spectrum, but thankfully I didn't. I ended up giving this book a 3.5 stars. I ended up buying this book last summer. I'm gonna admit it. I bought it for 2 reasons. 1, because I'd heard a lot about it, and 2, this gorgeous cover. I couldn't not buy this book and have this on my shelf, and I'm so glad I have it, and I will never get rid of it. I know, I judge books by their cover. Don't come after me, please. This story follows 3 women in New York's elite. So they're like the 1%ers. Like they are in high society in New York. 2 of the women are sisters. The third, she married into the family, so she's their sister-in-law. And I felt like that dynamic was very interesting to read about. Each chapter is told from a different sister's perspective, and I found myself really enjoying every single sister. It definitely doesn't have like this huge plot line. However, I feel like you're just kind of going along with these 3 women through their everyday lives. You're learning about their past, you're learning about what they're doing, and it's very interesting seeing their different lives interconnect in this book. So I really enjoyed reading about that, and I felt like even though there wasn't like this huge like climax or anything like that, it drew me in, and I still was very much enjoying my time while reading it. Next, I read Offside by Avery Keelan. I actually started reading this book because I had just went to a hockey game with my family and I was in the mood for a hockey romance. This was not on my spring TBR at all, but I just really needed something hockey related. I was very nervous going into it because of how thick this book is. This is almost 600 pages long, which brings me to my rating. I ended up giving this book a 3.5 stars. The reason why is just because I felt like this story did not need to be almost 600 pages. Like it's not that deep. It's hockey. But our story is about our 2 main characters. The girl, she had just gotten dumped by her long-term boyfriend, who's like the captain of her college's hockey team, and she ends up running into his rival, who is the rival college's, I think, captain, possibly, and they end up forming this friendship and then later romance. And I really enjoyed it. I liked the 2 characters. I felt like it was a very quick read. However, it is a very long book, and I felt like it was just dragging, especially like middle towards the end. I just don't think it should have been this long. Like I feel like the story could have been wrapped up so much quicker. Like there was just so much extra added drama that probably wasn't necessary for the story to be good. But I will say I enjoyed the world that I was in. I enjoyed the characters, and it definitely satisfied my hockey craving. Next up, we have To Kill a Shadow by Catherine Quinn. I was really excited and looking forward to this book. This is a fantasy world about a girl who, in this world, everything is covered in mists. So so it kind of makes me think of One Dark Window, like that setting, like a gothic type fantasy. Our main character, she ends up getting chosen to be a part of this group of, I think they're called the Knights, and they are basically these warriors who travel into the mists and they try to find the sun. They try to find the cure for this mist because their kingdom is slowly dying. She gets chosen by this commander who is in charge of all the knights, and he is actually very young. And of course, you know, there's gonna be a romance there, obviously, but they have to figure out what's going on with these mists. It is a series. There's gonna be another book because of the way it ended. It definitely is gonna continue on. I ended up giving this book 3.5 stars. I am sad to say that it wasn't 4 stars or higher. I was expecting it to be 4 stars or higher. I don't know. I almost felt like the story wasn't fully fleshed out. Like I felt like it was missing a lot of key information or details. It almost felt like it sped through some of the main plot points, which I wish I had more of certain areas of the story. It definitely had like a Divergent Fourth Wing vibe with the whole training, if you can picture that, if you've read those books. Felt like the main character, she had things too easy, and I also felt like the romance was definitely rushed, but I still enjoyed it. I think I'll still give the second book a chance whenever it eventually comes out. I think what really made this story for me was just the setting. The feeling I got while I was reading it is what made me really feel like I was a part of the story and I could picture things very well. But once again, I just feel like a lot of the details and the information was left out. Next up, I read The Simple Wild by K.A. Tucker. I have been sitting on this book for so long, probably 2 years. I don't know why it's taken me so long to read this book, because I've heard really good things about it. I've heard a lot of talk about it and how it's just this really great romance. I will say though, going into it, it is not a quick romance. This is slow burn romance. It takes a really long time for you to get even like a little crumb of romance. I ended up giving this 3.75 stars. I did enjoy it for the most part. However, it had a very slow start, and once again, a very slow romance, which once it hit. I will say like the last 50% absolutely loved, but the first 50, I feel like it was just dragging a little bit and took a while to get to the good stuff. So still enjoyed it. I still liked the characters and I liked the world you're in. You're up in Alaska, which I don't think I've ever read a book set in Alaska. So hearing about the Alaskan wilds and like what civilization is like in Alaska was very interesting. So I did enjoy that a lot. And the final book that I read this month, A Broken Blade by Melissa Blair. And I'm giving this 4.5 stars. I really enjoyed it. Currently reading the second book and I'm almost finished with it, and I'm gonna then read the third book. Our main character, think Throne of Glass. Those are the vibes she gives off. She doesn't have the sass necessarily, but just she's a female assassin and she literally wins every fight she's ever in. I was so impressed with her. She was so strong, and hearing about her backstory in the story was just added to her character. Her character has so much depth and there's so many secrets that you don't know about her that I feel like even now I'm reading the second book, I'm still learning about her, which I love. I love that I'm peeling these different layers off of this main character because there's just so much to her that makes her who she is. She is a female assassin working for the king who is hunting down this figure called the Shadow, who is basically trying to take down the crown. And so she's trying to hunt this person. I will say it was a slow start, and that is why I didn't give it a higher rating. But after I got through that first 70 pages, I was hooked. Once the romance hits, the found family was so good in this book. I really enjoyed it, and I recommend it to anybody who wants a really good fantasy read that is similar to Throne of Glass. I haven't read it yet, but heard it has a lot of found family, Six of Crows. That's kind of what I'm picturing, but really enjoyed this read. And that is it for today's video. I hope you all enjoyed. Hopefully this helped you think of some books to read, maybe gave you some good recommendations. I will see you guys in my next video. Happy reading. Bye.